All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for some more. We're not planning on stopping this movement we've created just about 4 or 5 years ago now. To my regular listeners, you guys already know how we get down, man. Right to the point, and whatever the challenge, the obstacle, whatever you feel like is in your way right now, we're here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. Today, I have Lee Benson, the founder of I want to call him a founder of one thing, but there's so many things that he has done in the past. Right now, what we're going to dive into is the concept of ETW, which is a book. Is it a book that you're? It's more of a consulting service, right? Execute to win.
Yeah, ETW stands for Execute to Win.
Right.
And excuse my voice, my allergies are really acting up today. But yeah, Execute to Win, it's a consulting company, and we have a methodology, and I have a book titled Your Most Important Number that outlines the mind management system for helping companies create value faster.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't want to confine it to just one thing you do, because I mean you had mentioned being in the aerospace business, you had mentioned starting companies and helping people. And there's so many things that you have experienced from a business perspective. And I think the best way to kind of get things started off is just speak a little bit about your background, some of the lessons you grew up with, that you learned growing up, and then we'll kind of go from there, man.
Yeah, so I've started 8 companies from scratch. I
Yep,
still
yep, yeah.
operate two. I've sold three,
Mhm.
one well into 9 figures, so I've done well financially. And some of the big lessons that I've learned is that the relationships, the culture that we have in an organization, what's the culture that drives the best attitudes and behaviors that cause the most value to be created?
Mhm.
When we get that right, it supercharges the numbers and it really helps with turnover in a big way. So
Yes.
my largest company, for example, when I sold it in 2016, we had 500 employees when I sold it. Never once in 23 years did I have a leader quit.
Wow.
Who can say that, right? And I think it's because of the culture.
That's
Now, we had to ask a few to leave because we kind of outgrew them, but it's the culture. It really matters. And keeping amazing employees, developing mediocre employees into amazing employees that act like CEOs of their own role.
yes. All right.
That's what we all want, right?
Yes, I mean, you're hitting so many triggers, so many great points. And before we get too deep into the conversation, I know you have a lot of experience with working with business, and I want to make sure we kind of get your definition on what actual innovative teamwork looks like for anybody that's listening. So it's a very clear definition on how they go about building, because that is a very impressive stat given the way jobs are being shuffled around these days, given the way we can communicate, the fact that you can build out a business and not have any of your leaders leave, voluntarily, but obviously you had to let some people go. Can you speak a little bit about, what innovative teamwork actually looks like?
Yeah, I back up to answer that question to what's really the goal. And every team should be intentionally designed to create a certain value for the business, right? And I look at an organization and I say, well, overall, let's say you've got a 10 employee company, 20, 100 employee company. How would you measure the value of your business? So I think the CEO's role is to continually and responsibly increase the value of their business. So if the one number that would be reflective of the value if they were to sell it was profit, whatever version of that it is, then that's the CEO's most important number. Now, when I go to every leader in the organization, what's the most important number for your team that's reflective of how the value that you were designed to create? So it could be marketing and it could be qualified leads with this definition, including a closing percentage. It's not activity, it's real value that's going to drive revenue. And then sales, it's closing, and then operations delivering the product or service, whatever that happens to be.
Mhm.
So I look at that and say every team should be intentionally designed to create value. Now I know I have an innovative team when they can say, or answer the question, how do you create value for the company? Well, this is our number. Here's where we started. This is where
Right.
we're going. We're currently on track. This is the best work we're doing to improve it. And it's an innovative team when
Mhm.
they are continually pushing that bar, not sitting on their hands, engaging in a bunch of activity. How's that
Yes. I mean, like,
land?
yeah, there's so much dead weight. And the reason I'm loving what you're saying, and I really hope you business owners took that in, or anyone that's listening that's in a leadership role, that it's their job to make sure they create cohesion. Because the reason I started this entire company, the brand Move Swiftly, comes from the football world. It comes from that background of every single member of the team knowing their role, whether you're the wide receiver, whether you're the backup offensive tackle, you know specifically those measurables and the things that you need to do to help contribute a team win. And what I started to see was such a disconnect in the quote unquote real world, in the working world, where you have so many people that are simply there just collecting their check. And too often do leaders just kind of let that go because there really isn't a manual. You know what I'm saying? There's no manual. You kind of get told, hey, go to college and now you deserve to make six figures because you have some fancy degree. There's no manual. There's very few leadership development. And one of the things that really struck me when I was listening to your story is you have an actual acronym for mind. Right? You have an actual acronym for mind. And so much of it boils down to mindset in regards to how you develop as a leader and what kind of pride that you take into your organization. So can you kind of just speak on, first of all, you can give the acronym yourself, but also speak on the importance of having the correct mindset when you're talking about taking these roles?
Yeah, MIND as an acronym stands for most important number in drivers. So what's the
Yes.
most
Yeah,
important
yeah, that
number?
was it. That was it. That was on point, man.
Yeah, most what's the most important number reflective of the value a team's creating? Could be the company, could be any function. And then the drivers are the most important work that they can leverage to improve that. And it's a continuous improvement effort, right?
Yes.
So that's where mind actually came from. And the mindset that I encourage everyone to have, and I work with for-profit, nonprofits. I'm working with 17,000 families right now, is to drive this value creation culture within families. So the mindset within companies is a value creation mindset. How do you create value for the business? For all the listeners, ask your leaders, ask anybody in your organization that question. How do you create value for the organization, for the business? And if you get an answer that is more of a job description, well, I come in and I do these five things, that is an amazing opportunity to improve perspective, mindset, and all of it. It
Yeah.
should be, I create value this way. Like when I ask a team member, a leader, or a non-supervisor team member in a company that I'm working with that's deployed the mind management system that I describe in my book, Your Most Important Number, they say, oh, I'm on this team. This is our most important number, and this is the best work that I'm doing to continually contribute to improving it. That's a
Hmm.
pretty darn good answer.
Yes, sir.
And and that most important number has to do two things. It's reflective of the value the team's designed to create
Hmm.
and drive the majority of the right behaviors, because you can pick a number that seems good, but it could
Hmm.
drive the wrong behaviors and then be sort of negative from a value creation standpoint. But I
Hmm.
think that's it. As one, does that make sense?
Now, walk us through a little bit about when people are going after the wrong measurables. Like when someone could be in a situation where they may be doing busy work. And this is one of the things that I talk about in my first book, Swiftly, is, the great John Wooden said, you never want to mistake activity for achievement. So when we're talking about knowing how to create that value, a lot of people don't really understand where to start. All right. And you had mentioned the nonprofit space, you had mentioned the business space and working with families. And in my opinion, they all sort of align because everybody's trying to find their role and everybody wants to feel valued. Everybody wants to feel like they're actually going to work, or they're in their families and they're improving. But some people just don't know where exactly we're going to find a measurable. And it's crazy that you had mentioned job description, because there's the school I teach at currently, one of the biggest issues I have is dealing with the person who would just go to a job description and say this is what you're supposed to do, but never actually say, hey, this is how we create value because we're a startup business and it's something all of us can be bringing to the table. So where can you give some examples and where maybe some business owners may feel like they're doing the right work, quote unquote, but they're getting the number wrong because they're not seeing results year in and year out?
Yeah, let me go to team and then I'll go to individual
Yeah.
quickly. So on the team side, let's say it's a company with 50 or more employees and you're responsible for HR, right?
Yes.
And you decide, hey, I think our most important number should be retention. And everybody goes, oh yeah, that sounds good. Let's make that our most important number. Great. 3 years later, you kept 98% of everybody, but 50% of the folks can't do their job. But you won because you picked retention.
And
Right.
then
So
you were going after it thinking that like you're progressing, like you're going as thinking you're success because you're seeing that number.
100%. So a better, most important number for HR would be percentage of seats filled with capable people.
Right.
And now we're driving all the right behaviors, not the wrong behaviors, that we're recruiting better, we're training better, giving leaders the tools they need, leadership development, all of that is we're driving the right behaviors. So that's an example of it. Now, how do you know? Let's go to the individual level. How do you know that you have a capable person sitting there? Well, for every single role, I never go to a job description. It makes no sense to me. I look at it and say, what are the outcomes they're going to be held accountable to?
Yes.
What are the basic duties that they have to do, administrative, whatever it is, like every role has that. And what are the capabilities that they need to be able to have a good shot at achieving those outcomes?
Hmm.
So when I think about football, let's say you hired me to join a team
Hmm.
and I've never run a day in my life and I'm, 100 pounds overweight. I couldn't do that job. It's right. I wouldn't be in shape to do it. So I like within a company having, hey, here's a role. You're going to fill this role. There's 1 to 4 max outcome-based responsibilities that we're going to measure you on. And when we hire them, we say, we're hiring you. This is incredibly important, or we wouldn't even have this role. Like it's important. Every job in the company is important, or we wouldn't have it. Why have it?
Yes.
And here's how we're going to measure it. And do you believe you can do that? And it's always, oh, of course. And if I can't do that, something's wrong with me. Well, nothing's wrong with you, but
Hmm.
thank you for giving this a shot. And here's what it looks like over time, and you need to stay on track. But if it falls below this line, it won't work. We'll have to make a change. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Right up front, we had that conversation. Okay. And you're going to need these capabilities to have a good shot of achieving it. You have about 3/4 of them. So we're going to be training you on the other ones. This is your training program over here. And then here's a list of sort of general duties that you have to make sure you're doing every day as part of your job. And now, when it doesn't work, well, let me back up. For every 10 that you would have to fire because it didn't work out, you'll save 6 or 7 of them at a minimum
Yep.
because you were so clear about the measurable objectives they have to hit and their training program about the capabilities to be able to achieve it.
Yes.
And I would say 49 out of 50 times when you have to let somebody go, if you've done it the right way, 49 out of 50 instances, they're going to, yeah, I totally get it. We talked about this. And in fact, when I brought people in and I've said, even before their butt hits the seat in my office, when I've had to let people go, hey, this isn't working out. We both know there's no surprises. They already know because we're measuring this. Let me help you find another job. Maybe there's something in the company, but I'm going to help you find something that works for you because
Yep.
everybody is right for some culture and some position out there.
Hmm.
And I always made it a rule where every leader, if you had to let somebody go, you missed it too, bringing them in, both take
Hmm.
responsibility. You have to
Exactly.
stay in touch with them for at least a year after they leave.
Hmm.
But there is that one occasion out of about 50 where they throw it back and they do something I call weaponizing false morality. But I'm a good person. How could you fire a good person? It's like, no, hang on.
Right. Yeah. I've heard a lot of that.
We paid you 100% of what we said we would when we said we would. You said you would deliver this. You've been delivering 30%.
Hmm.
It's not equitable. This doesn't make, it has nothing to do with who you are as a person. Thank you so much for trying. So
Yeah.
that's like team and then individual. If you do this,
Mhm.
you have a much higher chance of success.
Yeah, so there's two lenses that you guys have to take away from that. One is from the owner's perspective, which is the transparency, which is before you even get yourself to a point where you're bringing anybody in for a role, you have it in your own head. You have it clear what your business needs, what your business is all about, and specifically what you're looking for in a person. Now, from the employee perspective, there's an appreciation that's going to come with that transparency. There's an appreciation that's going to come with that clarity to where, like he said, if they're not measuring their measurables that were clearly laid out to them, they have really nothing to say. It's one of my favorite sayings that my coach used to say all the time. The film don't lie. Film does not lie. He would, if you want to complain about playing time, we'll go in the film room, click it, and say, this is you. That's your number. You can't, you're not hacking it, you're not making the play. And to me, that is the way that businesses should be run, because when you start getting this information earlier and earlier and earlier, you start getting clarity in terms of what you want your career to be, and you can start transitioning from this idea of having a job and more so focus on what your career is. The issue is, and one of the things I want to kind of get your opinion on is we have technology, and you've been in business for decades, and I'm sure with the way we communicate with people, with the way people now actually sell themselves for jobs, we got chat gpt write resumes for folks, we got college kids confused about where they should apply. How has technology at all, have you thought, affected the way businesses are run and how they go about creating this culture, and do you think it's been a positive and negative? What's your overall just take on how these forms of technology and AI is affecting the way people are able to lead and run their businesses?
Yeah, it can help or hurt. And the way I like to say it is if the methodology and process and culture is right, it can help in a really big way. If the methodology, process, and culture isn't value creating, then a tool won't help. Tools don't matter, right? Because some will say, oh, I'm going to install this software. We're going to start using AI. Well, based on what? If it doesn't work manually, the tools don't matter
Yeah,
um, until the methodology is solid for creating value,
right.
and then the tools can make it easier to sustain and scale. So that's
Mhm.
how I think about it. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I remember, I was Stacy that I was chatting with to set up the interview, and she was telling me how you actually just started a podcast, and the name of the podcast is Show Your Value. And I'm gonna let you talk about it in a second, but I do want to make sure I tell this story because it was back when, man, it was I lost everything, Lee. Like I went bankrupt, lost my car, got repossessed. I was sleeping out of the car that got repossessed. Phone got taken away because I tried to start up my own minor league team. Luckily, I was only 25 when that happened, so I was able to bounce back. But I would sit in on this entrepreneurship class at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, because I was trying to work with the professor in business. And I remember after the class one time, I said, how do you teach entrepreneurship? How exactly do you teach it? And he just ran through a whole list of all you have to do is create shareholder value. And when I listen to you talk and I hear the title of your podcast, it's like if you just figure out how to continue to create value in yourself, something good's going to happen and something's going to click. So, all that being said, speak on how you started it, what the show is all about, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and for me, I would say there's three buckets of value creation. There's material value creation, so you want to get a good return for the investors, the shareholders. That's super important. There's emotional energy value to be created, which is the X factor for leaders. What does it feel like? How do they show up? How are they passionately talking about what's possible and engaging everybody in these productive conversations and action to actually get there?
Hmm.
And then there's the spiritual value creation bucket. In the context of a business, it's about connectedness. Whether you're deeply religious or the opposite, it doesn't matter. Being connected is important to everybody. And that's why I put it all into that bucket.
Hmm.
And so for me, it's about keeping value creation in balance with all three of those in a business. And one of my companies that I sold for well into nine figures, uh, we got a 21.6x multiple of EBITDA when our strongest competitors might have gotten 8 at the time
Hmm.
because we were creating holistic value in how we were positioned. Every team member really did think and act like they were the CEO of their own role. Everybody knew their stuff. People would comment when they walked through the facility. Everybody looks you in the eye, they shake your hands, and they talk about the profitability and what they're doing next to create even more value in their department. For our world, it was an electroplating shop, or it was a hydraulic shop, or it was a hangar where they were refurbishing helicopters. All of it. That's pretty cool. And we grew really fast, and we had a believable story around where we're going. But for me, it was about creating value in those three buckets and thinking about value creation holistically. And it's interesting. I actually feel better the more balanced I am in those three. It's not equal. It's different for everyone.
Yeah.
But the more I really cultivate the emotional energy and the connectedness value creation with the material, and I want to get better at all of those for as long as I'm here on this planet,
Hmm.
I just feel better. And even a few times where I've lost money investing, if the net positive value was better because of what I got on the emotional energy or the connectedness spiritual side,
Hmm.
then I am totally good. So I think it takes a while to get people's heads around that, and that holistic value creation perspective is really important. And even within families, you
Yeah,
know,
actually, you beat me to it because I recently now I've been going to church every single Sunday. I started this past summer, and I've now become a group leader, and I'm going to be starting to do like really involved in just just going and being a part of it. It creates something to where the pressure is off, and it brings back that balance. And when you had already mentioned being or working with family members and figuring out a way to create a balance between your business and your family. Now, I grew up in a home where that balance was kind of off. It was really focused on business, but the family element, you could see that they were despondent. So when you talk about creating that balance, can you give maybe some practical examples for any business owners that are listening in that may be struggling with how am I going to create this business? How am I going to lead, but then also show up with my family, which is obviously incredibly important as well.
Yeah, and for a business, if you want to continually increase the value of the business responsibly, of course, over time, if you get the all three of those things right, it'll increase the value much faster for the business. So if I take emotional energy, and this is around the leadership bucket, most companies don't have a definition of what it means to be a leader in their business. And for me, a simple definition that I blanket everywhere I go, and I've worked with hundreds of companies, my own companies, is leaders get results and they foster an environment where every team member is intrinsically motivated and empowered to create more value over time. And that's it. And it's how we show up. And when leaders do that, when folks talk about engagement and they do surveys to see how engaged everybody, I think it's mostly a joke
Yeah.
when they do it
They're
that
kind of
way.
checking a box with those, and it gets kind of generic.
Oh my gosh, right. It's like what isn't what I want is productive engagement. And so if we have people that are 20, 30% energetically engaged in creating value for a business, which is probably and may even be lower than that across the United States on average, you get a certain level of value creation. Well, if you get the leadership emotional energy piece right and how they show up and always talking about what's possible and where we're going and engaging people in doing that, what if you increase that sort of energetic, productive engagement to 70%, 80% or higher? That immediately drives results. It's incredible. So that's an example of how to do that. It's like intentional leadership development to drive that emotional energy and for this higher level of productive engagement inside the organization. And then on the spiritual value creation bucket, it's about connectedness. So what are the company rituals and programs that you have to provide more opportunities for team members to engage with each other?
Yeah.
And the larger company that I sold, I actually put in a 10,000 square foot gym, had two full-time functional movement certified trainers. You couldn't use the equipment on your own. You had to train with other team members. If you trained
Wow.
2 days a week for an entire month, we'd pay 100% of your health insurance premium the following month. If not, you pay 20%. We pay 80.
And
Still a really
this
good
was
deal.
like a requirement that they had to do this,
No, it was
but it was
voluntary.
like available, right?
It was voluntary, and we paid 100% of your health insurance premium if you went. And if you brought your family members,
Mhm.
uh, we had kids programs, spouses
Yeah,
programs. They
yeah.
were, you know, seven or not seven, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. You get even more money in your paycheck.
Yeah.
So that's an amazing ritual to drive connectedness with everybody. We did a ton of other things. And every weekend, there would be 20 plus barbecues or events I was invited to that employees were having. So it's intentionally driving connectedness through the rituals and programs that you have. Oh, and by the way, the gym, um, that ended up being way more important than diet. It was weird. I mean, we had healthy eating clubs and all that,
Yeah.
but when you move right and you're in shape, I mean, people were getting off pain medications. It was crazy. And for 5 years straight before I sold the company, our actual cost of healthcare in actual dollars, not factoring inflation, went down over 5 years. Who can
Exactly.
say that? And we'd have 360 plus people out of 500 team members every, going at least twice a week into the program. So I knew you would love that.
I
And
absolutely, I
that's
do
just
love. I
one
mean,
example.
that's it, man. You speak my language, man. I mean, I say it all the time. They don't. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. So when you, as the kind of the franchise or the overseer, the person that's making these decisions, outside of show them that they're not just a face or just somebody that checks the box. Show them that you're going to do something that's going to actually improve their lives outside of work, and they will be loyal to you. That works in every element. And it's so crazy because the guest I had right before you, the previous guest, shout out to Lawana, but her whole family worked at Target. Her entire family worked at Target, and now she's running her own consulting company. But she was telling me she took advantage of every certification, everything. They were paying for the bachelor's, they were paying for the master's, a year's salary before she went and went on her own. And these were all things that the company, the higher ups, people, the executives that get looked at as such terrible people. If you look at too much of the news, but these are people who actually cared about the well-being of every single employee and the energy. Walking in there, you're not just showing clothes at this point. You're actually doing something like that. You feel like you have a purpose. So that's big.
Yeah. Well, and there's an important piece I learned, and I've made every mistake you can make. The first year in '93, when I started my first business, I think I almost went out of business 15 times that year. I mean, I've got all the stories and made so many mistakes.
Yeah.
What I learned about this gym and making it successful, even though it's really good and everybody should do it, human nature doesn't just do things like eat healthy and work out because
No.
they should,
Right.
and it's good for them. So until before I paid them to go to the gym, I got maybe 10, 15% of what ended up going to go. So just because like this is, and I've heard a number of business owners, I'm offering this, this is a good thing, nobody's doing it, and they're frustrated. It's like, no, let's think about it. And so I started paying them to go, and it jumped from 30 or 40 to 360 plus.
Mhm.
And the net result for the company was a lot more productive energy. So we made more money, we got better. It dropped artificial barriers in the company because senior leaders working out with everybody. And we saved, gosh, I don't know, $1.5 million a year on healthcare spend, even though we spent 600 grand a year on the program, including, paying everybody on this. So we have to factor in human nature. And I don't know if that's landing right when I talk about this, but just because it's something good and people don't respond to it, I don't think we should get frustrated. It just tells me we designed the program inappropriately, factoring in human nature drivers. But it was a giant win for everybody, and I loved it. And I had talked to other leaders that, well, why would we pay for this? And even my own team, there's no way we're paying for this. This is good for them. They should adjust this. Yeah, but human nature doesn't should just do that. That's just the way it goes. So anyway, so talk to me about how that lands on you. It was an
Yeah, no,
interesting.
I hired a business coach. Shout out to Trey Baldwin if you're listening, but he would call that feeding medicine to a dog. Giving them something that you know that they're going to need. They're kind of resistant to it, but you kind of feed it to them because you know in the back end how much it's actually going to help. And I can see people who may be only thinking about their profits or thinking about their salary. I'm not paying them to go to the gym. That's their responsibility. They're here to do a job. But then you're like, hey, wait a minute. If you want to keep this job over time, you're going to have to continue to make moves that show people that are sure they're going through life, folks. All right, you're not just, I mean, again, they come in and we're trying to put our head down, we're trying to work, but you're going through life when you come in into whatever form of employment that you may have, and you as that owner, you as that person that has responsibility to make the correct decisions, you have to show them that you care. All right, the greatest, I can go on a rant on this, the greatest coaches I've ever played for, all right, they simply show that you care. Hey, how's mom doing? Hey, how's your sister doing? How's school going? Small things that makes it so, all right, I'm gonna run through a wall for that guy. Well, I'm gonna show up every single day and give the 100% best effort I can. And it's through little things all adding up over time. And that's really what you're teaching when you're talking about having a great method, having a great system, and really touching people in a way where they get energized. So I do want to be very respectful of your time. I definitely appreciate you coming on. What would you say is like the next phase for you? If anybody wants to reach out to you, where do you sort of send them, and what do you see coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, you asked this question in the beginning, like what was it like early in life for me and all
Yeah.
that. I came from a super low income family, family members in and out of prison, some for some really bad things.
Oh no.
Out of the house in high school, only spent one night in a truck that I bought with my money. Then I had an apartment the next night. Best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
And so what I'm passionate about is unlocking the largest area or pocket of pent-up value creation potential, and it's the kids in low-income families.
Hmm.
And so I took over in May as the board of directors of this company called Dinner Table. I took over in May as their interim CEO, And we built 17,000 plus, almost 18,000 now. I just looked a little bit ago, families that are in our dinner table family community. And that's a free community. They can find that at dinnertable.com. And then they can join communities that are even tighter knit, doing more deep work around this stuff. And I have my own
Is
community.
this just in Phoenix, or would that be something we could spread,
Oh,
any?
it's global. When
Oh,
I every Thursday night I do a call for anybody interested in joining a community, becoming a coach, being an affiliate, offering it to their employees as a benefit. And I get calls from Pakistan, South Africa,
okay.
South America, all over the U.S. and Canada, Mexico. So this is something I want to take to millions of families. So what's next for me? I mean, I feel like, I just know the reason I'm here today is to continually promote these holistic value creation behaviors in families, for-profit companies, nonprofit companies, and dinner table is an amazing place to get it right for families. So I love the work that's going on, and I'm just going to keep doing this. I also run CEO mastermind groups where CEOs, I limit it to 8 so we can do a deep dive on everybody's business at
Right.
least every 2 months. It's 1 day a month commitment. And it's about driving holistic value creation there over the next 10 years. I literally want hundreds of chairs
Hmm.
with maybe 3 or 4 groups each around the world. Plus, we help companies do this. They can DIY it, they can use our consultants for help around it. But all of it's about that. It's all about driving this behavior out in the world. And I think that'll make a dent. If I can get this into millions of families and millions of employees in a number of different organizations,
Hmm.
that's going to be incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm here for it, man. Please let me know. Again, me being the sports guy that I am and teaching, I run into a lot of things, a lot of broken homes, a lot of, single mothers trying to figure it out, single fathers, people, new families. Again, the sports world that I come from, it attracts so much of that. And, again, just need to be shown the way. People are not willing to do the work. They just don't know how and how to create the method and the holistic values that you're speaking about. So I definitely look forward to keeping up with that. And please send me more information and more details on how I can support that. So the fine. Well, first of all, what's the best way to get in touch? What's the where do you normally send them? Is it LinkedIn or website?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's pretty easy. But also go to my website, etw.com. You can learn about the masterminds doing this work in your own business. Just changing the language a little bit makes a giant difference in literally every company that's done it around this mind management system we put in place. And if you're interested in the family stuff, go to dinnertable.com, book a call with one of the team members, or join one of my Thursday evening calls. It's 8 p.m. Eastern time every Thursday. And this is a real movement. I have one community that I started in September for the parents of the Black Mothers Forum micro school kids, uh, low income families. Anyway, a lot of tough stories in there. And what I think, I mean, I think there's more drive there. The
Yeah.
key is changing perspective, and I've heard you talk about that in a couple of the podcasts that I listened to getting ready for this. Once we change perspective, those kids can do more than I've ever done in my life. I mean, that's so
And I
that's
see it every day, man. I see it every day in the smallest ways. Actually, I was just talking about that this morning on a live stream where, it was last week, and from the majority of the students that I teach are young Black girls, and they were being fed so much nonsense about the election, about how, oh my God, it's over, and then because the wrong person, quote unquote, and there was almost a fight that I had to break up between a Black girl and a white boy. I said, look, the fact that both of them made it means now you get to figure out ways in which you can come up with policy. Think about what they were able to accomplish and start to apply it in your own life. And they actually started to become friends, and they had a great conversation when you just keep them from divisive language in general. So you're right. When you show a kid that, what?
yeah,
It's another level of like what they can do. And it's so amazing to see that. That's probably the best part of teaching at the school I teach at, is seeing that little thing.
yeah. Yeah, I'm teaching a class to probably 60 parents, so 30,
Yeah,
34
you see that, right. Yeah, that's awesome.
tomorrow. Doing that tomorrow for my birthday. It's the best thing I can
Oh,
think
oh,
of.
there you go. Happy birthday. That's awesome. All right, so Lee, the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. Yeah, think back to when you were a teenager, go back to teenage version of Lee, you're struggling, you're trying to figure out where your next meal is. You're seeing things, poverty and all that kind of stuff. Pretend that that version of you has come into the Zoom room, give him some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
The challenge with that is saying something they would actually hear. And so the words of encouragement I would give is learn to value struggle, because whether it's healthy struggle, unhealthy struggle, or intentionally designed struggle, that is where you grow from. And that's where you come out of it creating more and more value. Struggle to get a capability or character trait, build self-esteem, self-confidence, use that to create value and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say. Learn to value struggle. It's huge.
Yes, sir. I would, I mean, 1000% agree with you, man. That struggle piece, and it comes out in subconscious ways whenever something happens, boom, you're ready to go because of that specific struggle. So, all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.